first thing first, you can see that there's a little bit of growth in the total revenue from the store, and then 18% growth in email marketing versus previous period. Now the thing with previous period, the thing with this, using only these types of metrics to figure out if your new email marketing setup is working versus the previous time, is it leaves out a lot of context, right? And email marketing, contrary to what most agencies will have you believe in, is very reliant on your acquisition. And if you truly run an e-commerce brand, you know that the level of ads you'll be running in 1 month, or the amount of ads you'll be running in 1 month, is definitely not going to be it's most likely not going to be the same amount of ads you'll be running in the next month, especially if you're going through a new phase of like testing new things. So for this brand, there's been a lot of new testing, trying to figure out new ROAS and stuff. So it's very likely that they've reduced their ad spend. I don't have much context on that, but it's very likely that they reduced their ad spend, which or maybe they increased their ad spend, but they're not reaching as much profiles organically as they used to reach in the past month, because they are still testing new creatives and trying to figure out with the new agency. By the way, they hired a new ad agency also to try to figure out a new way to ramp up on that. So we're still going through a lot of testing phase on the creative side of things. So that might affect the amount of organic growth that comes on the website, and also that comes to sign up for email, right? Very, very likely to affect it. And so basing revenue changes, when you really start to think of it, basing growth on revenue changes month to month doesn't necessarily make sense. I hope that's a good enough explanation. What I like to do instead of using a comparison period of the previous month, I like to compare the new fresh month of performance after a new setup with the same period in the previous year, right? And as you can see, even that is not very reliable, because they probably were running more ads and ramping up more on creatives around this time last year, February, March, and so logically the revenue we're doing on a total revenue status versus the previous year is definitely lower, because they're not running that much ads. But email is even much lower. You can see 42% lower, right? So that's why I said it's not very, very reliable to use previous period versus previous year. Now, going to the actual things that you can use to figure out if email has been working fine. One thing I usually do is look at one thing I usually recommend is looking at the revenue per recipient. But then when I say revenue per recipient, it's for founders that are not very experienced with retention marketing. They think it's the overall revenue per recipient of the account. By the way, this is a calculation of the overall attributed revenue per recipient of email or SMS in the entire account. This particular metric is not a good enough, showcase of performance versus previous periods. The revenue per recipient you want to actually be looking at is the revenue per recipient per each flow, right? Case in point, the new welcome flow that we just implemented for this brand. You can see that the revenue per recipient over the last 30 days, it's at $2.09. So if I wanted to sort of like compare it to the previous period, which is basically January, the entirety of January, as we already know, they ran a lot of ads and creatives in January. You can see they're doing about 190k total store revenue, of which 45,000 of that is coming from email. Compared to the last 30 days, you can see 171,000, of which 49k or 50k of that is coming from email. So if you look at it critically, you can see that it goes without saying that they ran a ton of ads, much more than they are currently running. in January, and so they were able to ramp up to 190k overall revenue. But then the weird thing that you start to notice when you compare flow by flow is that their welcome email, as at the time that they were running a ton of ads, was doing 87 cents per recipient. In the last 30 days since we set up the new flow, we're doing $2 per recipient. That is one contextual, nuanced signal of better performance, right? And then this revenue per recipient is basically just the amount of people that the amount of revenue you've gotten divided by the amount of people that actually received the deliveries. That's like the layman definition of revenue per recipient, what it means. So you can see that in January they sent this welcome email, went out to about 10,000 profiles, and of those 10,000 profiles they were only able to get about 8.9k, maybe $9,000 from those people to come right in conversions. In the last 30 days we've sent this welcome flow to only 3,000 people, right, which is like I think 1/3 of the people that received the previous welcome flow, and we've been able to get $7,000 from those people, right? I mean, it doesn't take too much mathematical, should I say, explanation for you to understand that this welcome flow is already performing better than the previous welcome flow. And when this welcome flow may eventually sends out to 9,000 recipients, you can already start to figure out the amount of conversions that will come from that. You understand what I mean? I hope you understand what I mean. So that's just me explaining detailedly, right, than I usually do, of why of how growth performance works here, right? And the same thing applies to every other flow. I just used welcome flow specifically to explain it in layman terms, right? So if with 3,000 recipients we're already doing up to 7k, and in January where they were ramping up a lot on ad spend and they were sending to a ton of people, 10,000 email recipients, and they were only able to do 9k from conversions, you know that there's a problem with this flow, and we've already sort of like solved that problem with the new flow. And by the way, should I mention, this welcome email flow has less emails than our new welcome flow, right? But because most of those emails were very salesy by nature, that was why it didn't convert. And for this particular brand, a supplement brand, it was very important for education to be done and matched with the amount of like sale promotion, so to speak. So I don't want to get too complex with it, but that's one sign. Moving on, I like to go into dashboards, analytics, and from there I like to note a few things also. Even from the dashboards, in the last 30 days, you can already see, even though the total revenue just grew by 1%, which, like I said earlier, is largely, should I say, reliant on how much they're pushing creatives versus previous 30 days. Attributed revenue, however, grew by 18%. Like I said earlier, these metrics are not good enough in terms of like figuring out if you're doing better. But then when you start looking at the campaign performance, looking at them specifically in silos, right? Looking at simply only the campaign performance summary, you can see that versus the previous 30 days, we grew in conversion value of like 8.6% versus the previous 30 days. And then versus the total recipients versus the previous 30 days increased by 205.9%. This increase in recipients was largely because previously their strategy was literally send only to 30 to 60 days engaged profiles. And contrary to what most content out there about email marketing and campaign sense would teach you, well, it's good to maintain, it is good for you to be here in your campaign stamp and see yourself maintaining 60% open rate, 70% open rate, and 3% click rate, 5% click rate. It is very healthy looking to have those metrics here, you know. It is very, but in my opinion, they are very vanity. They are vain metrics. They are very vain metrics, because what you're essentially doing is paying for all of the profiles you have active, by the way, but only monetizing a small percentage of them because they are the ones that open your emails most. They are the ones that click your emails most. What about those other people that are signed up, that you are paying for, by the way, by just being signed up to your email list? Are you condemning them entirely because they don't open your emails often, right? So a strategy of sending only to 30 to 60 days engaged profiles is not very sound, because eventually there will be people that just don't open your emails that often, right? And it's not because they hate your emails or they don't want to buy from you. They're not just the kind of people that open. Now, those people can cost you open rates and reduce your open rates like 40% range, sometimes as low as 30 to 35%. But having them being engaged increases your chances of conversions. Now, it will affect your open rate, it will affect your click rate, especially in the first few months when you start retargeting them. You take a very big drop in open and click rate and thus conversion rate. But in these cases, the nuanced thing that you want to be looking at in terms of performance to figure out if you are doing better than before is, first of all, are you to be able to do this, actually, first of all, you want to be sending to specific segments, right? So that's going to help you really reduce the impact on your deliverability, the negative impact on your deliverability. But we'll get to that in a bit. But one thing that's going to be the sign of performance. Now, for the average person that's not experienced, you see open rate of 30%, 0.42 average click rate, and you can see all of them. All of these metrics looks like they're just declining and declining. The average person will think, oh fuck, you're ruining everything, you're ruining our account, it's not making sense and stuff. But in this case, we're not ruining the account. The only reason why all of these metrics are falling down is because we are expanding the net and we are reaching more profiles. And so because we are reaching more profiles, all of these metrics will take a tank versus how healthy they used to look before. Overall, what matters is conversions, right? And if we can take a tank in open rates, not to a crazy level where our account will become obsolete, like in the 20% range, but tank a little bit from maybe 40% downward to 30%, and in exchange for that, we get to engage a larger surface area of the profiles, and we also get to increase conversions. I think that is going to be a fair trade, in my opinion. Now, because this is the first few months of us widening the net, so to speak, again, you can see that all of the revenues are taking a tank. Revenue per recipient is the only one that's not taking too much of a tank, but all of them are sort of like going down. That is fine in the first few months, at least if you know what you're doing. In my opinion, and based on experience, what usually happens is that 3 months in with this brand, all of this will start getting healthy back. The open rate will sit consistently around the 45 to 40% open rate consistently, and that's because we're not just sending to engaged profiles, we're also engaging, albeit not so frequently, but we're also engaging on unengaged profiles, right, that don't necessarily open emails often but would like to buy continuously. I hope that was a very clear explanation, but yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, based on experience, 3 months into this strategy that we're implementing, everything will start stabilizing. It's not look too healthy and too green, but one thing that you realize is, one thing that you'll be able to figure out in terms of performance is that the conversion value will increase versus previous period and even versus the previous year, and total recipients will increase also. This by the way, the increase of total recipients is the main reason why all of these are taking a tank, because we're trying to re-engage people, like I said earlier. So you can see total recipients increased, but the thing you want to look at, okay, so unique opens also increased, open rate decreased, but unique clicks, so this is where I should have come in the first place to explain. You can see that click rates decreased, right? And click rate is just literally I think the amount of people that click your emails divided by the amount of people that opened your emails, right? So you're calculating the rate. But when you look at the unique clicks versus the previous period, you start to find signs that actually, even though you were getting a higher click rate in the previous period, in the previous month, you were getting lower clicks. But because we're widening the net, we're getting 100% more clicks to our emails campaigns versus the previous period. These are the subtle signs of better performance, right? Yes, we have low click rates. Yes, we have low open rate, but we have 100% more unique clicks. That is what widening the net looks like. We have 3.6% more unique conversions. So of course, we still need to work on, content valuability to the audiences that we're segmenting. So this definitely needs to go higher than this. But these are signs, these unique clicks and unique conversions, they are the real metrics that show increased performance, better performance than the previous time. And then if we stay the boat with this strategy, over the course of the next 60 days, 30 to 60 days, these click rate and open rate metrics that, in my opinion, are just lag indicators, they will solidify, and then things will actually start getting better. So you'll be getting more revenue from, how do I put it? You'll be getting more revenue from the same amount of sort of like effort and work, even less. By the way, they were sending more email campaigns in the previous month before we came in, and yet we have 100% more clicks by reducing the amount of campaigns we're sending, but widening the net. So that's what we did here. We just widened the net. Revenue per recipient reduced because we widened the net to do that for specific campaigns. But then you can see average order value increased. That's a sign that the value so there's a new strategy we're trying to implement where we improve how often we try to sort of like improve the average order value. We push them towards bundles instead of just one product, and so this is a sign of it working well here. So that's pretty much it. It's a different case with flow performance summary. For flow performance, ideally you should see that the revenue per recipient increased. This is the overall revenue per recipient. Like I said, to compare the new flows versus the previous flows, you want to use the flow you want to compare it flow per flow to see new performances. You can see we also increased the total recipient, and so because of that, open rate took a tank, click rate took a tank also, but unique clicks increased by 42.9%, and unique conversions also increased for email. Also, SMS is all green. They did not have SMS before, so we just implemented that also. And conversion value also increased overall by 15%. Average order value to increase because we pushed bundles more than. So these nuances is what email marketing agencies will not reveal to you, or to just cast a wider net, is what the average person that does not have experience like that with retention marketing will not know, right? You might just see, our open rate is reducing, it's very bad, what's the problem? And you think, you're doing a bad job, we need to hire a new person. It's not always so, right? These are other things that you need to also look at, right? First of all, you need to also be clear on the strategy the person is implementing. The person has to be very clear with their communication with you and letting you know why they are doing this, why they are not doing this, why it's responding like this. That's a sign of a good operator. Unique clicks are the real metrics you want to be looking at, right? Unique clicks versus the previous period, unique conversions versus the previous period. So a lot of people out there push out open rate, click rate, how they are the performance indicators with email and SMS marketing. I would argue differently. You want to look at what you want to really compare is your unique clicks growth versus your unique conversions growth, and then overall conversion value, So yeah, that is what we're working with, and then average order value too. Now the conversion rate also, it's mainly the reason why it's low right now is because we added, like I said, more email per flow compared to the previous strategy. And so when you combine everything, some emails will not work, some emails will be there to sort of like hype or to nurture the customer, so they will not necessarily push promotions. So conversion rate is not a very reliable metric also to notice, to look at and study for performance. So like I said, what you want to be looking at is the unique clicks, the unique opens, the unique conversions, and then overall the conversion value. That is what really shows you better performance. So conversion value, you can see unique conversions, unique clicks, unique opens, right? Those are the real metrics. And then deliverability, of course, like I said, open rate overall. So this deliverability is calculating deliverability across the account. You can see deliverability will tank because we are widening the net. click rate will tank. Open rate and click rate will tank because we're widening the net. You can see the graph here. Now don't let us look at the graph. So increased total recipient overall, open rate tanks, click rate tanks, but bounce rate reduced, spam complaint rate reduced, unsubscribe rate reduced. Why? Because the content that these people are getting are more relevant and specific to their situation, right? So this is what segmentation does. Segmentation and widening the net does. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, so all of these, like I said, they are all lag indicators. They're not the real metrics. I think that's pretty much it for this video. This is how to really, get the nuance of if your email and SMS marketing strategy is working better than the previous month, especially when you just set up a new one. These are the metrics you want to be looking at. So I hope this helps someone out there. If you have anything or any question, just put them in the comments below. If you have to reach me for more light on this, you can always get through to me through my links. Have a great day. God bless you.